To the Bring Ruckus community that might be tapping in and listening to this conversation, I do just want to introduce James Gregson, who is the creative director of Lego's internal agency. He's been on the internal agency team at Lego since 2018 and leading as creative director since 2020, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Well,
and
what a couple of years it's been.
a wild ride, I can only imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm really excited to just chat more about it and learn more about you and your perspective. I would love to start by diving into the internal agency side of things. I know those are
Yes.
words that everyone recognizes.
It's a hot topic.
Yes, but as someone who has done years on the agency side, external agencies, that is, and then
Yes.
now has a leading role at such an incredible internal agency, I would love to just understand, do you have any advice for like founders or executives that are scaling companies and trying to decide between like, hey, is it time for us to build out an internal agency or should we continue with these external relationships? Like when is the right moment to make that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know if I'm best suited to answer that with any strong foundation, right? Because I haven't started an internal agency, but I can tell you, listen, what value we can bring, or what value an internal agency can bring compared to an external agency,
Yeah.
and it's pretty clear, right? Certainly at large organizations, there is a clear trend of internal agencies, and that they know a lot more of why than say I do. But I would say very simply is that. The onboarding of an external agency takes time. The churn at an external agency is a real thing, and at an internal agency, we pride ourselves specifically at Lego as being the brand stewards. Right, we know the brand better than anyone else, because we are down the hall from marketing, so to speak, and we live it and breathe it every day. And while yes, there are some wonderful external agency client relationships and partners that exist, there is a massive amount of efficiencies, both from a process standpoint and a cost standpoint, most importantly, with having it all under one roof. I think at the same time, there are some realities to competency gaps that you have within internal agencies. And I think one of the most important things that we talk about is know what we know and know what we don't know, and make sure that we're bringing in the best of the best from an external agency standpoint to fill the gaps when we have an opportunity, at our fingertips, right? And we've done that with some really interesting Latinx test campaigns that we've run, and that's in the Americas, partnering with a Latinx specialized advertising agency, just to make sure that we're hitting on all the important points.
Yeah, that totally makes sense, especially the point. I mean, I love tapping external resources, and then also the point about even the bandwidth draining effect of onboarding a new agency or managing an agency can take so much time. And even if you're counting on that being external, relying on external agencies, who internally is going to be dedicating all of those times to managing those relationships, right?
Yes.
Do you ever, so like when you're on an external agency, the client is, I mean, king, almost always, you just do what the client says. How in an internal agency do you get to push back a little bit on the marketing teams that you're partnering with, or are they fundamentally your clients and you just say,
yeah, I mean, listen, I think we all have as we say internally, right? We all have the same email address, right? We're all getting paid by the same company. Our paychecks all say the same name. So I think it's really important to set that expectation, and to feel and to build a partnership where it is less subservient, right, and more supportive and strategic. I think that's a really important piece to what we believe we can bring. Listen, from person to person, it's not always like that. Some people want us to do what they tell us to do, and there are reasons behind that. Like any internal or any relationship anywhere, you pick and choose your battles. But the reality is, listen, we strive to be strategic business partners, on the creative side and the strategic side of the fence. And that's what we like to try and bring.
For sure. And then obviously, Lego is such an expansive company with so many, I mean, infinite product lines as far as it was
Yes.
from my perspective. Does that give you like the type of variety that you would have when you were agency side and working with lots of different clients? Or do you find that you're, working on
Yeah,
the same things so consistently as the brand stewards?
that's a really good question. I mean, listen, I've worked at every type of external agency you can think of: startup, boutique, private, publicly owned, right? Globally publicly owned. So, listen, I got a super broad, diverse, experience, from a client background standpoint, and in that agency experience. I think, listen, within Lego, we have a wide, diverse sort of variety of problems we're trying to solve. Now, at the same time, it is very much principled in most cases around either getting the attention of shoppers, or business challenges like retaining customers, or bringing in new audiences. So it isn't as broad as an external agency, but there still is a diverse sort of a variety of problems that we're looking to solve on a regular basis. It's not like the same challenge over and over again.
Definitely. In terms of, and that kind of brings me to my next question in terms of the challenges that you might have faced. So you've
Yes.
been a creative director of like one of the most enduring toy brands in the world,
Yep.
during one of the craziest times any of us have seen in our lives, right?
Yep.
So yeah, what have you learned? How has the last 2 years been?
Man, oh goodness, where to start? What have I learned? One, I'm wildly humbled to work in the course of the last 2 years, given what was happening around us, to work for a company that was wildly successful and has been wildly successful, has been amazing. Two, to be, because of that success, but also because of the responsibility we feel we have in the face of children across the world, and supporting and donating to various causes over the last 2 years has been fantastic. So foundationally, that is very important to, and has been a wonderful sort of backdrop in what has been, as we all know, a crazy last 2 years.
Not everybody can say either of those things, that you've worked for a company that's done well and that has actively done well for the world. So that's huge.
I mean, I think, I don't want to harp on it because I think everyone's talked about it, but I think, everyone that was in a leadership position, whether directly or indirectly, I think learned real quick how to lead, if they were a good leader, and where they probably needed to get better at, because everybody needed support in one way, shape, or form, right? I used to use the example of, my partner, my co-creative director, and myself oversee a large creative department, but my direct reporting line's a little smaller. And so we had team meetings or regular catch-ups, in the heat of COVID. And I used to say, out of the 6, 7, 8 of us, every single one of us had a different living situation, right? So there isn't like a one size fits all. It's everything from a single father to me having 3 kids under 4 at home, to someone living by themselves, someone living with their mom. Everyone had a different living situation. There wasn't a one size fits all, right? So empathy, trust, all those good things. Obviously, again, with the foundational understanding that the business was doing really well, so we could really lean into that idea of trust, and like if people need time or space, give it to them. So yeah, it was a wild time. I think also being working for a brand that had a really interesting purpose in those last 2 years of, someone similar to Netflix or YouTube, where we were a core piece of people's lives for the last 2 years in a good sense, right? Whether it's binging Netflix or puzzles, our sales really resulted positively because people needed entertainment, and thankfully our product does that.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think we've been talking a lot about just how it's never been so important to take care of your people. Obviously, we're all going through such a global crisis together
Yes.
and experiencing it from such different points, but also still experiencing the same craziness. And as we have all kind of adapted to need more from our relationships, from our work environments, it's become a really interesting shift in terms of like what makes a great leader, what makes a great company culture,
Yeah.
and how do we connect with our people through these screens.
Yeah, it's been it is a wild ride. I for one, I think, people often ask, how does working remotely affect, creative output? And I'm on the fence, and listen, there's hundreds of different theories on this one. I really believe that it's a lot of like the employee profile you have. Do you have extroverts or do you have introverts? I tend to believe a lot of creatives, spread the spectrum, but I think most tend to skew on the introvert side, at least from my experience. And working remotely is wonderful from that standpoint, right? I think there isn't pressure to speak up in a conference room. I mean, there's that awkward, like, who's going to go in a virtual conference. But I think there's a lot more time and space for introverts and for creatives to come up with ideas, and work in a little bit less of a structured environment than, say, an in-office corporate environment. At the same time, I think what we really miss is the onboarding of new people, or the collaboration within a broader team, certainly like with new team members. That's really, really struggled. We've worked with a couple external agency partners on a couple really exciting projects, and the growing pains that we had of not just being in a room for 2 days. I think we would have cut off 3 weeks from a process standpoint if we could have
Absolutely.
just gotten into a room and just, not burn the midnight oil, but like really cut through the BS.
Definitely. I feel like I'm kind of a hybrid, creative,
Yes.
a little bit of an extrovert, a little bit of an introvert, but I feel like it's easier to get the heads down, like just I am creating something time. But what I have not found a replacement for is like the interactive brainstorming sessions. Like I feel like it's really hard via
Yes.
Zoom to get in that space with people. And I could totally see how that makes a project take a lot longer.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely true. I think we've really focused and tested on like smaller team brainstorms. So, art director, writer style things. So, really getting closer to, so it is much more of a partnership, so that, it's not so many voices in a virtual space. That's been really super helpful.
Definitely. One of the things that we talked a lot about last year, as a community that is heavily rooted in growth marketers, was the decline of the efficacy of ad spend, particularly
Yes.
on social media,
Yeah.
which has just been so interesting to see as someone who it has a marketing background or works closely with marketing. Is like we've,
Hmm.
you know, built entire business strategies on these PPC acquisition plans.
Yeah.
Because you can press a button, put a little bit more money behind it, and get all of these new people, and it's not working anymore. So how do you see this shift creating more space for creative and brand marketers moving forward?
Yeah, great question, and something that is very close, near and dear to my heart, given my sort of my background in social. Listen, there is always going to be a place for social in some way, shape, or form, on behalf of brand communications or brand marketing. I think the world of it being 80%, 70% of your marketing budget, even if you're a D2C brand, I think is over. And I think you see a lot of D2C brands scrambling a little bit, but then also, looking at things maybe a little bit differently, right? The value of email, the value of your owned ecosystem is so much more valuable than it ever was. I used to tease a colleague who worked at Facebook, now Meta, saying like, are we going to start seeing like Facebook like campaigns again? Because that whole idea of like building an audience and a community so that then you can actually appropriately target them is so much more valuable than it was a few years ago. I'm all for platforms like TikTok. I think the creativity and the content on those platforms is amazing. From an advertising standpoint, I think they will benefit because the likes of Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and others are struggling. You saw the Snapchat's stock prices, I think up 40%, I believe, after earnings, and that's, I think, as a result of the main place being Facebook being hurt from a performance standpoint. So listen, it's a really interesting place. I really think brands will start leaning into what their own digital ecosystem and their own digital audiences look like, and try and build out that audience space that way.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. When we were doing research to prepare for this conversation, we found a talk that you gave where you mentioned that social had become the dumping ground for all things marketing communication.
Yes.
I really love that.
Yeah.
And I mean, my question was like, what can brands do to create more of a genuine connection, more genuine communication with your audience? And it sounds like you were kind of speaking to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, listen, I'm a big advocate. The world of social and brand communications, at one time was flood your channels, right? Flood your channels with as much content, as much information, and see what sticks, and iterate and optimize. I'm really looking forward to flipping that, right? And fewer, bigger, better, less is more, whatever saying you want to try and lean into, because I think that's where you start cutting through, and regardless of your budgets, I always look at what we're putting out on our social channels from a brand, and say to myself, like, why as a fan, or more importantly, why as not a fan, would I care about this? What would this do? How does this push me closer down the funnel? And not everything has that conversion-based objective, but it costs a lot of money and a lot of time to create really great brand storytelling. And I look to companies like Yeti, who do just a fabulous job of telling like the most beautifully told brand storytelling. Now, not everyone has Yeti budgets, but they're a really good example.
Oh, I love what you said about fewer, bigger, better. I think that's
yes,
that's a great approach.
Yeah, that is the goal.
For sure. And then in terms of brand storytelling, so what are some of the most important questions that you think, if you are creative, and it's whether you are crafting a brand story from scratch, like working with a new client, or attempting to create from within an existing brand story? I'm sure that you have to onboard creatives to your team all the time.
Yeah, no, great question. The fundamentals to advertising or storytelling are not that different. I think attention spans are certainly shorter than they used to be, and distribution methods are certainly different. But at the same time, a human truth is a human truth, right? Or an insight is an insight, right? And I think every good idea starts with that. And we've all felt it, whether you're in marketing, in creative, or in advertising or not, where you see something and you're like, yeah, that resonates with me. Absolutely. I think that's ultimately the most important component to brand storytelling. A little bit along a different side of the spectrum that I, I always say is like, why would a consumer care? Like, you know, listen, brand, right? There's reasons that creators, influencers are, and some of the greatest creators and influencers are bigger than brands because they do a better job of telling stories because they're not typically trying to hawk product, right? Because they're focused on creating content, right? I look at Kayci Neistat, right? I'm dating myself here, but like he was, you know, the first creator from my mind that really, you know, lent into storytelling as a product and really didn't lean into the merchandising that these new world of creators and influencers have done an amazing job at doing. You know, so he was really, really effective at you know, a non-commercial driven message.
I don't
right?
know anything about him.
Oh goodness,
Myself.
that's fine.
What
Yeah.
what was
So
he?
Kayci Neistat was a YouTuber based in New York. He was one of the bigger US based YouTubers. Has crazy Ray-Ban glasses. He was just a videographer. I don't think he graduated high school, let alone college. And he partnered with Samsung. And I always use their case study as a prime example of what influencer marketing should be, where he had a relationship with Samsung over the course of, I think, 3 or 4 years, you know, and created a series of pieces of content and commercials for them, you know, all, you know, to a crescendo of, I think it was Grammys. He did in 2017, he did a Grammys ad that was all about creators. And, you know, if you look at the ad now, it's the Samsung Kayci Neistat Grammy ad. Man, they were so ahead of their time because it was all about creators were there are here to create, not brands. And Samsung gives you the tools to create your story.
Wow,
Yeah,
it sounds like I'm not sure about the timing, but I wonder how influential that was on Apple's big like shot on an iPhone.
on an iPhone. You know, I'm sure it's pretty similar. It was Samsung was first.
For sure, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
That's very cool. And then my last question for you, we powered right through them, but what are some of the most unexpected places where you find inspiration?
Oh, I love this question because I like that's natural curiosity. I think it's the most important characteristic to my success. I certainly look at it in others as well. Obviously, there's a balance between focus and curiosity as well. Listen, everything from TikTok. You know, I find content in TikTok fascinating to me for a number of reasons, but also just how creative people get with their storytelling. I think it's just, you know, it's fantastic. Everything from, you know, a psychologist that I follow on there that creates like overwhelmingly supportive and positive, you know, pieces that are fabulously lit and just very moody. And his name is, he's Seattle based. I can't remember his name now. But you know, that really sort of inspires me.
Send it to me. I'll link it.
I will. Perfect. Okay. You know, all the way through to you know, the pre-rolls that I get served on YouTube, for example. You know, I always tell the story in presentations or in conferences where you know, I get so excited if a pre-roll catches my attention because I know how difficult it is, right? Because whenever you're on YouTube and you see an ad, no one is like, ooh, an ad, yay, right? And that's my job, so that's a little tough. But also like when you go through that process and you don't click skip, that to me, like that is the ultimate success on a number, like across the board in marketing and advertising, right? So I always really overanalyze like what was it that's so great? You know, the New York Times, you know, Truth campaign did such a great job of doing that on YouTube. There's a whole bunch. Trying to think what others, but yeah, so I take inspiration from weird places. It's not like I go out and seek it out. Podcasts are a wonderful weird place to get inspiration. I listen to a lot of like business and financial based podcasts, nothing specifically to do with creativity. But everything from, a highly successful, $1 billion valuated beauty brand where the entire executive leadership has zero background from beauty, right?
Yeah.
It's oddity. They have Il Makiage and a handful of other brands underneath them.
Oh, I didn't know that about them. That's
yeah.
very cool.
Yeah, so that's like super. That's the sort of stuff that I'm like, see, not that gives me hope, but it gives me, interesting places to start my story and figure out, how things happen, how the world works, all that sort of stuff.
Listen, business and finance podcasts are definitely an unexpected place to get creative.
I agree. If anyone, I can highly recommend Group Chat and a Robin Hood owned podcast, which is called Snacks Daily. And it's a 15-minute podcast. Listen,
I've done that one. That one's good.
Yeah, right. And it's much more. I mean, you want storytelling, like they take numbers and turn it into a story. And again, it takes me outside of my category experience that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, that I am so focused on, and I really try and take those sort of experiences and those learnings and apply them wherever I can.
Oh, I love it. I've definitely been trying to level up my financial knowledge. So the helpful finance podcasts are always welcome. And that's a great one.
Yes. Let's not go down the Web3 NFT tunnel, please.
Not today.
Yes.
Well, James, thank you so much for your time. I'm so glad that we were finally able to connect and make this happen.